I'm not certain. I just went live on Facebook, so I got to say something to these folks. All right, welcome to Georgetown, Texas. We're in Central Texas, just a few miles, 20, 30 miles north of Austin. We've had a lot of technical difficulties this morning, and but we're at a log raising. Everybody's at lunch, but frankly, we've just had almost a cyclone blow through here. A lot of straight line winds, dirt in people's eyes. Even my log display, half of it is blown on the ground behind the camera. So let's just see how this goes for a little bit. What we're doing here today is one of several events of this type are done by Satterwhite Log Homes. And in the industry, a lot of you may not be real familiar with the log home industry, so part of the purpose of this live stream is to acquaint you with what Satterwhite does, and just to get you oriented towards how to approach realizing that log home dream. The wind is bad. I'm not even sure if the microphone is going to even work out here for this. But we're going to try it anyway because we've gone to a lot of effort to do this. You know, the live stream effort to do this is pretty, it's highly experimental. We've never done this before, so we'll just see how this goes and hopefully get better next time. Before the hot dog call, everybody, that whole slab behind me, the house that you can see in the background of my sample table here, you couldn't even see the logs for all the people gathered around. But I'm afraid that people have kind of checked this out now, and due to the winds and dirt and eyes and all that sort of thing, that a lot of people are leaving. But I do expect the crew is going to resume work here shortly, and so we're going to have a lot of people who are on their way perhaps, and we were told that there was a front moving through around the noon hour here in Georgetown, Texas. Other than the wind, it is an absolutely gorgeous day. Perfect temperature. I mean, there's no telling what the weather is all over the country today, and you know, Satterwhite's not just a Texas company, but our homes are built nationwide. We've been in business 40 years, so this is not just a Texas thing, and the things that we're going to show here today are not just about Texas. There's Satterwhite homes in virtually every state in the nation. The conditions in each place, if you look at our website, you'll notice that there is, we're one of the few log home companies that tries to publish pricing on our website, but we're pretty much forced to state that as a range, because certainly the conditions here in Central Texas are different than you would have in Montana, where you would have snow loading and engineering involved on a roof structure. So the Gulf Coast, subject to hurricanes that we've had here in Texas recently. So, goodness, everybody is actually sheltering from this wind behind vehicles and everything. That's the reason we're not seeing anybody up around the house right now. But there was 20 or 30 vehicles here just half an hour ago. But that has... All right. Let's just talk about a few subjects with the log home industry, just as an orientation for those of you who share the log home dream. And that's, by the way, log homes are one of the most common. You can take any economic or demographic way you look. That is just a great American dream to have that getaway, that home. Log homes are typically built on by people they're not a starter home. People build a log home intending to live live out their lives in them. Usually on family land, a lot of times on family lands, or a special piece of property. I don't know the story behind the home that's going up here, but it's very likely that this is family land. We're in Georgetown, Texas today, just 20 miles north of Austin, Texas. Here we go. You got audio? I just feel kind of silly doing this. It's like talking to yourself. This is. We're doing a technical check here. I know we're still live streaming. You know, this little fuzzy is actually helping out. The audio's, I'm not blown away. Let's do it. All right, that was we had a technical break there. All right, we've our log raising event. We had a great turnout. We've served lunch. We've had some technical difficulties on the video stream side of things, and a lot of trouble due to wind. It's just it was good and breezy this morning, but we were told that there was a weather front moving through, and we have had strong straight line winds here during the lunch hour. So much so that most of the people who are still here are sheltering by vehicles as they finish their lunch, and the crew will be back on the house working here shortly. Let me tell you some things that you can do with Satterwhite right now. Just take a short break. Our offices, if you're watching this in live stream, our offices are open right now. So you could call us at 1-800-777-7288. We've got a brochure. Let me see if mine didn't blow away. I was going to show some of these things today. The wind is so strong out here that the logs are blowing. At least these small sample logs on my table. There's no problem up on the job site itself. We've got a small brochure that we'll mail to you if you'll call us at 1-800-777-7288. And we're there. Our normal office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, Saturdays, 9 to 2. If you call us, we have offices various places in the country. If you call that toll-free number, we'll get you in touch, no matter where you live, with somebody who is familiar with the situation. We build lots of homes all over the country. Satterwhite has literally built tens of thousands of homes. We've been in business. We're closing in on 50 years now. So we're one of the larger companies in the log home industry. But certainly not too big to pay individual personal attention to each customer, but large enough to achieve those economies of scale and that sort of thing that makes us an efficient and reliable builder. So I'm not sure if I need to get an update on construction. I feel like since the crew is here, that now that lunch is over, that they will be resuming construction a little bit, and we'll be able to show you the use of the tools and that sort of thing. But you know, I think that your log home story won't start with Satterwhite, and it won't start with all the types of wood and the products that we've got to show. Your story will start with your dream and your piece of land. That's really the most important thing, to find that land, and if it's in your family, that special place for you. That's more important than choosing a plan. However, once you are ready to start shaping your plans, you can look at the Satterwhite website. We've got some kind of announcement taking place here. What? Excuse me?
There was glasses that got dropped and they got found.
Oh, somebody's looking for their glasses. Okay. Where were we? We were talking about your land, your property. because if you attend, let me go back to the events that Satterwhite does in ways that you can participate in with us. We do several types of programs. This log raising, the best thing to be notified of these kind of things is to be on our Facebook page. Facebook is going to be the first place that we will post our event calendar for the coming year. We typically do about 40 traveling shows in cities across the country. And the one near you, that's the way to spot us most quickly, is on Facebook. Today, we have our events, our Satterwhite, in addition to industry events that are typically at convention centers or at that sort of thing in major cities. Satterwhite produces a really immersive and intensive 2-day seminar program that's held in our home office in Longview, Texas. We do that event twice a year in the spring and in the fall. The events for next year are online now. You can register today. And so you check out those dates on our website. But it's a 2-day event, always a Friday and a Saturday. The Friday agenda that day is a full-day seminar that is presented by Sam Satterwhite, and we also have charter buses, and we see it's just a whirlwind tour of homes. That's one of the very best things about the event in Longview, Texas, is the fact that you can actually visit customer homes, things that we don't show any other time of the year. We do, some people think, and we do have models in any of our locations. Our wonderful exhibits of log home construction. We do have model homes, but I'm talking about a situation where at our seminar, private residences are open, and it's just it's extra special to get to see those homes. So that happens on Friday. The event in Longview, Texas, the Saturday following is breakout sessions. We do an all day on Saturday, every hour on the hour. There's about 4, 5, sometimes 6 different exhibit areas that change on the hour, and so it's like high school. You look at our schedule and you pick what the subjects are that are of greatest interest to you and how to spend your time. But it is such an intensive experience that we have many, many people who repeat that seminar with us twice, 3 times. I haven't checked, but it's very, very frequently. People just have a wonderful time. We all read the reviews, and they're uniformly people love that experience to come, and we love it too, because it's one of the few chances that we have where you just kind of meet everybody in the company. We're all there, and it's really fun. So. And plus the food is great. That's the Satterwhite seminar is $50 per person, which is basically there's 5 catered meals, so that just to help offset the cost of the food and the meals primarily. Okay, what else have I mentioned? Those are the three type things that I can think of right off the top of my head to do with Satterwhite Log Homes, is to get on our Facebook page, and you'll be notified of things like this log raising. And also, they're not there today, but as we finalize our show calendar for the coming year, and if you're listening to this after the live stream is concluded in a month or so, you can see all the dates for the coming year as soon as they are available. We're just having our planning meetings and all on that now. So, the land that where you build your log home determines a great deal about the log home itself. If the foundation type, what kind of building codes, what kind of environmental conditions that home will be subject to. You know, if you're building in northern climates or places where there's extensive snow loading on a roof structure, that's a different set of circumstances than here in beautiful sunny Texas today. So log homes are incredibly strong. We're down to at least a quarter of what was here before this wind picked up. You know, if you're just joining us, we've had quite a major storm front, or windstorm front, and straight line winds blowing through from the north. Let me tell you a little bit about where we are, and I know that your plans and where you build. Satterwhite has log homes, mini log homes. Again, we've in the tens of thousands of log homes. So our building system is proven not only just about anywhere you could possibly build in the United States, but actually all around the world. We have Satterwhite. There are Satterwhite homes literally all around the world. It is blowing out here. If you just joined us, we're in Georgetown, Texas today. We're going to be here until 2 p.m. local time. Let me tell you a little bit about the Satterwhite building system and these trees. I may sit in on this one. It's so bright out here I can't see my own screen. It would break my heart to find out that the camera was reversed and pointing at the hay pasture on behind the camera. Let me see if I can check that and adjust it a bit. Sorry. That was the big announcement on this live stream, is this is highly experimental. All right. I was thinking about it on the drive down this morning, but in 1973, I was 15 years old, and my family, I had my driving permit. That's the reason, my learner's permit on the car, and my family took a trip out west, wound up in Yellowstone. I attended the rangers in the national parks do these evening chats in the campgrounds. And a ranger at Yellowstone in 1973 told the story of these trees that are today Satterwhite logs. So let me back off that a little bit and just tell you a little bit about the Satterwhite logs themselves. I've had to lay down my samples here because the wind was taking this wood and just blowing it off the table. And probably will if the wood is quite lightweight. So that was this one particularly was just dominoing all the other samples off the table here. But the story of this timber, and you know, there's a lot of trees in Texas, and there's as you look into the log home industry, there's a lot of people who make a lot of claims for various species of wood. The wood used in Satterwhite homes, we're among it's not we're the largest user of dead standing timber. These trees that we make house logs out of are Engelmann spruce that occurs at the highest altitudes in the Rocky Mountains. It is literally the last tree at tree line. When you get up at high altitude, it occurs only at the very tops of the mountain. By the time that you're up in the forest, you're at an altitude above, far above. You're looking way down the mountain at the zone that say trees such as aspens that are not that most of us know are a mountain species, but the Engelmann spruce is at the very tops of the mountains. What happens is, just like any other living thing, trees have a lifespan, and as they become The story that the ranger told me in 1973 in Yellowstone was about actually man's intervention in the forest, because as the federal government and the West was settled, let me adjust that. As the West was settled, the government began to suppress forest fires. There's a lot of in so many things like that in life. What we think is simple on the surface, and we act on it as if it's simple, and fire is bad, so let's stop fires. So they did a lot of that, and that turned out not to be a good thing. And it took them almost 100 years to understand the ecosystem at high altitude. And unlike the area of the country, or the area of Texas that Satterwhite calls home in Longview, Texas, is what's called the piney woods. And the pine trees are a conifer, but the pine trees that we have in East Texas, they have these big cones, and they open and they spread their seeds. But that's totally different than these high altitude conifers like lodgepole pine and Engelmann spruce that Satterwhite makes house logs out of. These, unlike the low altitude conifers, these trees have hard, tight pine cones that the trees drop to the floor of the forest, and they lay there dormant. And what just from the Rangers talk, 1973. That fire is actually a part of the ecosystem. Lightning strike, whatever the cause, it's a naturally occurring event in forests that they catch fire. And in the high altitude conifers, like this Engelmann spruce right here, that hard, tight cone that's on the forest fire, when they get it's heat activated. The heat causes that cone to expand and release seed and reseed the forest. And that wasn't understood until 100 years after the fire suppression efforts had been started. Well, unfortunately, what happened due to that is there was, just like your yard or anything else, if you let leaves accumulate on your yard, at home without raking the leaves, and you just let it accumulate and build up, and dead limbs dropping. Since there was no frequent small fires, what happened was the forest had an enormous fuel burden build up. And so when the fire comes today, under those conditions, with enormous fuel burden on the fire, it doesn't activate the cone. That fire burns long and hot, and it actually destroys, it incinerates those cones. So it becomes the man's activities in trying to save the forest actually have threatened the forest. All these forests are pretty much administered by the United States Forest Service. That's the Smokey Bear people. And so today's forest management compared to 2 generations ago or 50 years ago or more, the federal forest, I think every American could take a great deal of pride in the way our forests are being managed and maintained for future generations. I mean, there's probably, if there's any better, more healthy forest in the entire world, I couldn't tell you. There's a lot of sensitivity, and rightly so, I guess, when things go wrong with forestry. But it's important for us to also recognize when things are going right, and the United States Forest Service does a great job. So part of their efforts is remediation, because they do have a fuel burden. So when you suppress forest fire in the condition, maybe too long of a story for a live video. We're going to get up there in a minute. When I hear some saws going, we're going to go see some of this log raising going again. If these guys haven't, I'm just waiting for that to get started again. So we're going to tell stories for a little bit. But the issue is there's a great deal of fuel accumulation on the forest floor, but there's also another issue that humans, we have a hard time relating to this because, you know, we all have our lifetime and our lifespan that we judge everything in the world by, but everything isn't on our clock. The lifespan of these particular, according to the ranger in Yellowstone, the lifespan of these trees that we're looking at here, their natural lifespan, like any living organism, they are not immortal, and their lifespan is about 100 years. These different species have different lifespans, but I was told that it was about 100 years. And like us, in these trees' old age, they become vulnerable to tree diseases. Let me see if I can show you some of that specifically. And the thing that this timber that Satterwhite has, the Engelmann spruce, is beetle-kill. And people say, "Oh, it's got bugs in it." No, that's not the case at all. If we get time today, we're having to improvise quite a lot because I'm going to walk around the camera and see if I can't get a good shot of this log. But this is a particular, Satterwhite makes a multitude of log profiles, different shapes. It's all an aesthetic choice. I mean, almost anything you can imagine. I think I've known a number of ladies who says, because typically it's a man, they've got that hunting lodge look, and the ladies might be a little resistant. And then when they see the palette that this material presents, we just see such gorgeous things done with it. So, but this particular log is the actual exterior of the tree is left unfinished, so that the bark falls off the tree. But if you can see this, it's character wood, but that's what kills the tree. That layer right underneath the bark, the tree disease is a beetle infestation, and it eats that sappy layer called the cambium immediately under the bark. It doesn't penetrate into the wood at all. I've replied to so many emails over the years that we've all seen baby toys made out of wood. You'd be perfectly happy having toys made of this wood in your child's nursery. But the bug and by the time we harvest this tree, the beetles have eaten it, and this wood has stood dead. The trees are dead. They're standing in the forest at high altitude, and they stand there for months, years. We know when we purchase this wood, because the Forest Service keeps great records. We know how long the trees have been dead. We know the environment that it's sitting in, which is out in the Western Rockies. We all know that it's an arid area of the country, a lot of desert in Nevada and Arizona and Utah and that part of the country, New Mexico, Colorado. That's where we're currently harvesting timber in Colorado. And our primary sawmill is in Utah. So Satterwhite has multiple facilities around the country. But at any rate, by the time we harvest the wood, these beetles that actually ate the living tree and killed it, they're long gone. There's no active insect infestation or anything. A lot of people, I've seen this, and I see a lot of rustic furniture because people decorate. People actually seek out this beetle-kill look, for decorating purposes. Let me see if I've got another one here. This one might even have a little bit more where you can see the insect tracks that actually killed this tree back in the day.
Put it in the truck for now.
So, no problem. Satterwhite, besides these type materials, log homes are today are incredibly elegant. I'm fortunate. I'm going to step in front of the camera and try to think what to do with myself here. But log homes they're incredibly elegant, but they're very rustic at the same time. So they're just done a range of things. We've all seen that, and most of us have. I mean, this look is frequently used in restaurants and in commercial buildings, places like Bass Pro Shop, outdoors, all those kind of things. Very common look. Let me show you. Lift this panel. I mean, a lot of restaurants, we're seeing this sort of decorating built out of. Our materials are used extensively in commercial buildings, and this is just like a wall covering. So just a panel made that way. So Satterwhite does pretty much an extensive commercial business as well. So maybe a log home might not be for everyone, but our materials are used a great deal in conventional construction, just as an accent a lot of times. So just whatever comes to mind. I see another thing. I've got some samples. The things I had on this table have blown away. One of the things that people will come to us for are materials to build pergolas and outdoor. So besides house logs, this would be a component of a pergola or a cookhouse or anything like that outside. That could be on any house, not just log homes. Sounds like I'm hearing a compressor start in the background there. So we're probably about to get some construction back underway. The point that really needs to be made about this dead standing Engelmann spruce is that Satterwhite does not cut living trees. These trees, our house logs, are made by trees that have been killed by natural causes, and our log harvesting operations are carefully overseen by the United States Forest Service, and you'd be welcome, more than welcome, to visit any of our sawmill facilities out west. If you're find yourself out there on a vacation or whatever, we love people to inspect where we've logged, but we work very closely with the Forest Service. We're not up there clear cutting. The Forest Service, actually, their foresters go through these Engelmann spruce forests, and they select on an individual basis, one by one. They mark the trees that we're to take, and the trees that are not marked to be harvested, we work very carefully, and we're not to harm those. So it's a very meticulous process. One of the side effects of us logging this particular species, we do this not. I've explained all the dead standing and all those things sound very nice, but the reason that we go to that trouble, because the trucking and getting these trees up at those kind of altitudes on the mountain, it is almost impossible to work at those kind of altitudes. We're very limited in the time of year that we can be there, because we're logging in areas that are above ski resorts. At that kind of altitudes, at the very tops of the Rocky Mountains. And so right now we had our first snow. Our current logging operations are in the very southern part of Colorado, but when we come off the mountain, our sawmill is in Chama, New Mexico, one of our sawmills. We have another major sawmill in Gunnison, Utah. Yeah, the guys are getting started again. I don't know if y'all can hear this. I'm wearing this little fuzzy cover on the mic because we're just blowing away out here today. But I think the front has passed through. The wind does seem a little better. Half an hour ago, it was blowing this piece off the table, and this is a pretty substantial piece that I really wanted to show a close-up if we get a chance here in a few minutes. But the reason that Satterwhite seeks out this special material is the curing process that it goes through. not just the fact that the tree is killed by natural process, with its own old age and insect mortality that's just naturally occurring. But unlike here in the humid climates of the South and in most other places in the country, low altitude logging or industrial logging or all the other alternatives that people would have to produce a wood of some sort, that high altitude timber, when the beetles kill it, and by eating the cambium layer and wringing that bark, wringing around the tree in there, when the beetles kill that tree, the tree doesn't just fall over and rot like it would anywhere else. What happens is that tree is left dead but standing in the forest. And this wood has some other properties and strength because of that environment that I've brought something I'm going to read in a little bit about what makes good timber. But the trees, it's the curing process that makes this material. This is the curing itself over time in the low humidity, arid western air, and that tree sitting there for a long period of time dries that wood out in a way that accelerated man-made processes just cannot hope to achieve. If we were to cut a living tree in this environment here in Texas, there's a lot of forests in East Texas. Those timbers are great for some things that they're useful for, like railroad ties, but they wouldn't make a great house log. Just like our own bodies, if you've read any of those, a tree is mostly water. So when that tree first dies and that wood is green, it's not useful for anything. That water has to be removed from the wood. And what happens as part of that drying process is the wood itself changes dimensions, which we all know. If you've ever seen a paper towel left that you've wiped up water in a kitchen and then watch that paper towel as it dries, it changes shape and it shrivels up and it dries a great deal. It changes dimension. So that fact, the change of dimension, is the most critical thing in log home construction. And if you want to consider the difference in a log home and any other type of home, there's a lot of questions that come to, and we can deal with frequently asked questions, or you can find all those questions about, is a log home, is it a danger to burn, or is it a danger with termites? Those things turn out not to be hardly an issue at all. None of us can help but ask those questions, but it's like, because they seem so obvious. But the question that is not obvious is how incredibly important the dryness of wood is. Now, all wood that you go down to the lumber yard, or you go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and you buy wood, all that wood has been dried. And so the way that would typically work with what's called dimensional lumber, that's your 2x4s, 2x6s, sawed trees that are sawed in, is they take that green tree and they saw it down into the dimension wood it is, 2x4 or whatever, and then they put spacers in it and take it into a kiln. And because you're dealing with thicknesses of wood that are, a 2x4 is not really 2 inches thick. That's a nominal dimension. It's more like 1.5 inches thick. And you can put that in, and you can flow air in a heated environment, and you can cook the moisture out of that tree and cause it to stabilize, and it shrinks to its final form. Now, I've watched Sam Satterwhite's presentation at our seminar enough times to know that I think the magic number is 18% moisture content. And they do that in dimensional lumber, 2x4s and stuff, that in the regular home market, they do that by spot check. They'll have a big bundle of 2x4s, and then they'll go in and they'll they'll spot check 2 or 3 of them in that bundle, in that kiln charge, and they'll make sure that it's 18%, and they says, well, okay, these are good, and then they're off to the store and ready for you to buy. Satterwhite, when you get into these massive pieces of wood, these big timbers that are big as railroad ties in many cases. I mean, our railroad ties are recycled as landscaping timbers anymore. You cannot accelerate the drying process for those trees. You can't. You could put a log this size into a kiln. I've got more samples down here. Everything blew off my table. I guess these are about the same size. Yes, obviously. Let me turn that around where y'all can see this. How the tongue and groove system, I don't know if you can see the tongues and grooves on these samples. That kind of gets it in the shadow. That's an interlock. That's another subject. But at any rate, as this wood dries, the difference with Satterwhite is these trees also, not only are they killed by a natural process, but they dry by a natural process, because that's the reason we drive out west to get them, and go to a tremendous amount of trouble, because we just think it is the nature's finest house log. The way that translates into your home is after all that moisture is removed, these logs are actually quite lightweight. That's the reason they're blowing off my sample table with this wind we've got out here today. A green log that was full of moisture, it would be very heavy and hard to handle. We're going to get up there and watch these carpenters. This isn't just about me talking about logs, but we're going to get up there with the camera here in a little bit so that y'all can see what's going on with the construction. But that curing process, the critical thing of importance is that the Satterwhite logs don't change dimensions to a great extent. All log homes are going to move a little bit, but with a Satterwhite log, that shrinkage and change in the dimension of those logs has largely occurred before the log ever goes into your house. I cannot tell you how much impact that has on every facet of building with a Satterwhite home, and the contrast that is with, there's many other building systems in the log home industry, and people who cut living trees and do things differently than we do, they build a quality house too. But they have to deal with the shrinkage issue. They have to, if they're not going to get their logs totally dry before they build a house, and they can't through accelerated process, to a large extent they can't. So as you delve more into log construction, you'll find that there's all kinds of workarounds in the way that log homes are built, and those and a lot of it gets very labor intensive, and also requires a lot more skilled labor. So the advantages of the dead standing timber is, one, there's no huge disadvantage. There's other species, and people, it's almost like a red herring that people start talking about species of log homes. But that's another issue too. The real advantage of these dead standing timber is manifest from end to end, not just in the day that you get your house, in the construction, the transportation of these materials, because there's less water in these logs. Our trucks can be loaded to the physical limits of a legal load, not to the weight limits. We never exceed the weight limits when the truck is as wide as it can possibly be and as tall as it can possibly, and all those load limits. So that makes a lot of the, we face some costs by going after this timber, this Rocky Mountain timber, that maybe one of our competitors might not face. so that we have a transportation. We pay a premium to get a premium piece of wood. So the fact that that tree doesn't have moisture in it means that it can be handled by the crew. They can lift bigger logs. It doesn't wear them out as bad when they're building. Our crews are able to work much faster. It also means that since our building system doesn't have to compensate for shrinkage and stuff that's going to occur down the road, problems with this log due to dimensional changes, and those kind of problems, like I said, everybody deals with them this way or that way. But if they didn't deal with them, what you would have is, as this log home settled, it would tend to pinch doors. It might even break glass. Doors would become stiff and not want to swing. Windows would jam as that home squeezed the things that you've got attached to the house. Well, with Satterwhite, everybody's got that problem, but our solution is just to go around that problem by starting with a superior log that is stabilized in its moisture content and its dimensional characteristics beforehand. And then that in turn yields even greater advantages, because we can directly nail interior walls to the log walls, where another company would have their framed interior walls would have to be constructed in such a way that they could change height at a different rate. They would have to slide in grooves cut, and they couldn't be directly attached to the logs, because that would the shrinkage that's inevitable in those other building systems would cause problems. And since we can unify and tie all those pieces of the Satterwhite log homes together, that in turn yields incredible strength. I've been out on a number of occasions and photographed homes that have been taken direct hits from tornadoes. We've got, if you come to the Satterwhite seminar in Longview, Texas, we show all the pictures that we would never print in our beautiful catalogs, because there's pictures in there, all these questions that people have. We've got pictures in the seminar that Sam talks and shows of log homes that have been submerged underwater in floods, not only in flooding such as you get in hurricanes with surges and just gradual, but we've got pictures of dam breaks and log homes that have stood through running water and side thrust and hydraulic pressures on the sides of them. And these homes will we've just never seen one that didn't withstand that. There's no better place. I mean, right here, frankly, this home, and let's just take a moment for those who are just joining us. We're in Central Texas today in Williamson County, Texas, which is the county immediately north of Travis County, where Austin. So we're just, these folks building this house could easily commute to work in Austin. So, but frankly, this is Tornado Alley. And I'll tell you, I've seen these things because I get sent out to photograph in a lot of occasions after natural disaster. And Satterwhite, again, has built tens of thousands of homes. So anytime there's any major storm outbreak, unfortunately, some of our customers are going to be affected. There's just that many of these homes. You don't see a lot of log homes just driving down the road, because it's not like anybody builds them in a subdivision and in the homes or any place. But when you get out into the rural byways and county roads and out in the country, it is just a wonderful, natural, it just fits almost any type of rural setting. It's a beautiful home. It's a beautiful home. Whether it's on a lake lot, this particular home here, the wind's picking up again. I'll just give a quick briefing here about where we are again. We're just we're on the just off the Interstate 35 corridor in Central Texas, and this home is being built on the east side of the freeway. But that Interstate 35 basically cuts Texas into East and West Texas. So we're on the east side. On the other side of the interstate from here to our west out here is the Texas Hill Country, and just a totally different terrain. This land that we're on between the Hill Country and I would say east of here to the Brazos River, which is the largest river in Texas, totally within the borders of Texas, is the best agricultural land, among the best agricultural land in the state. I guess the Red River country up next to the Oklahoma border is a great agricultural area too. But anyway, let me just do a little recap of something I may have mentioned earlier. But right now, today, until 2 o'clock, our office in Longview, Texas is open. You can call us at 1-800-777-7288. They would be glad to take your name there. And y'all not watching me over here. I'm going to be mocked mercilessly for doing this. I know, but oh, thank you. They're monitoring this. This is highly experimental streaming. This is our first effort ever on this, and we've had to do quite a bit of improvisation out here due to this wind. And I didn't bring enough clips to keep this tablecloth from blowing up and obscuring the camera path. So Satterwhite, and I mentioned this before, we do a lot of rustic type timbers. There you go, Alan. Thank you. Satterwhite, besides log homes, and I mentioned this a little earlier, we have people coming and leaving the broadcast, but we do all kinds of rustic accent woods, what's called character woods. And so besides our Engelmann spruce house logs that we do, we've got all kinds of beauty woods that are used not just in log homes, but all kinds of construction. And I think I lifted up and showed one of these panels. You'll see this type of thing in a lot of commercial construction these days. Restaurants, malls, shopping centers, wood. You know, there's never been any material in the history of mankind that's been more trusted for our homes. That's been true throughout history. Wood is just it's always been with us. It will always be with us. So one of the beauties of a log home is you're getting more of that wood. I knew I'm going to be ridiculed mercilessly. That's the reason I'm going to come point the camera at them in a little bit. I'd run across a guy named Douglas Mallock, who was born in 1877. He died in 1938. He was born and raised in a town, Muskegon, Michigan, which is on the eastern shores of Lake Michigan. And any of you who, get an interest in or who have subscribed to National Geographic as long as I have, the story of wood in America is very compelling. I mean, we've all heard of old Ironsides. You can go visit that ship still today in Boston Harbor. But that native growth in the timber in the American, by the time of the American Revolution, the days of English forest, Sherwood forest and all that, those days were long gone. So they were building with new growth. And as they reseeded their forest, wood is such an important material for mankind that they're wanting a rapid growth material so that they could build their cities. And so the English warships back in the days of the great sailing ships, the English Navy, which was the most powerful navy in the world, it was built with new growth English timber. And at the same time, the United States, tiny little fledgling nation up against the world's superpower at the time of the Revolution. But one thing in that day and time, wood was a strategic material because the implements of war since Roman times, the siege machines, all those things, they were built from wood. The catapults, the siege towers, down to the sailing ships. So America had access to old growth forests. And we won't get into just a ton of wood technology here, but I want to show you something that's beautiful, and I'm going to start by reading this poem by a man named Douglas Mallock that I've come to be quite fond of this poem. He was born in a logging town of Muskegon, Michigan, on the east shores of Lake Michigan, and all the Great Lakes have a great history of logging operations and using the Great Lakes themselves to float timber to market. This is just a very short thing. A poem called Good Timber by Douglas Mallock, who passed away in 1938. The tree that never had to fight for sun and sky and air and light, but stood out in the open plain and always got its share of rain, never became a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. The man who had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil, who never had to win his share of sun and light, sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger the wind, the stronger the trees. The further the sky, the greater the length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, by rain and snow, in timbers and men, in trees and men, good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarchs of both, and they hold counsel with the stars, whose broken branches show the scars of many winds and much strife. This is the common law of life. So I'm not sure that the Engelmann spruce that Satterwhite harvest is old growth timber, but I want to show you something that I've learned in the decades that I've been around Satterwhite is about trees, and that I just probably the most poor reading of that poem, but it's talking about how I'm going to read one of the key lines again, and I want to show you something. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger trees. I'm going to tell you something about these trees that Satterwhite harvests at the top of the Rocky Mountains. That land out there at those altitudes, gale force, the blizzards of winter, the harshness of life in that environment. You can take the same species of tree and you can grow it in Canada in a cold environment where conditions are hard and that tree goes slow. You can take the exact same tree that would grow in this environment in Texas that's warm and sunny and life is easy here, and that tree will grow like a weed with big sloppy cells, and it will be good for nothing. That wood is weak. But let me show you these trees. I just noticed this on one of the samples I was looking at as I was loading the car to come out here today, and I don't have any idea if this iPhone camera can reveal, but we've all seen tree rings, and I would like you to, if you can't see the tree rings in this thing, it's just a magnificent example of that, how tight and hard and strong this wood is. And even though we see natural, this tree, as I was saying earlier, these things have a lifespan of 100 years. We could probably count the rings in this tree and determine the age of this tree, but those rings are tight. So this tree lived its life at altitude in good times and bad. Some years there was enough moisture, other years were hard. Those tree rings vary. That builds up tension in that wood, and these checks are evidence. As this tree dries, every timber of this size is going to have, this is called a check. You're going to see these, and we'll get a look at maybe a close-up of some of the log bundle that was delivered here on this home in a little bit. But those checks are evidence that this wood is dried. Anybody who shows you a picture-perfect log, 100 years from now, they're going to is showing you a green log, because all timbers of this size are going to check as they dry. The advantage with a Satterwhite log is we see those checks at the time it goes through our sawmill. The fact that this check, these things, wood is such a well-known material to Satterwhite. Just so you'll know that all these checks have no structural implication. These go through a rigorous grading process. But because our logs are dry before they're milled, we can see those checks. It's no accident that this check is downturned on the bottom face of that log so that it will not catch rainwater. I mean, that's our guys at the mills are very, and these things meet that structural. This is the strength is there. That checking is natural. It runs here and there, a log at a time. But these logs are just solid. You can have absolute confidence in them. I've just seen too many homes that have stood up to everything nature's got to throw at them. And this is a quality product. We go to an incredible amount of effort to get this specific tree for our house logs. Okay, enough of me. I thought as I was looking at that, one more thing. I mean, obviously, I'm about to blow away here again. Goodness. But all these kind of things, this natural beauty and everything, that's why these are called character woods. This is not just fast growth industrial, like trees grown like a crop, which is all the lumber that you see in lumber yards and home centers. That's all timber that's just grown like a crop and harvested, and so that's all done for the around the economics of that. But these are actually the nature's product that grow in nature's natural environment, and they are character woods. But when you understand that strength and the environment that these logs, and I think a lot of people somehow know this about their Satterwhite homes. When we talk about this character wood, we're not just talking about the superficial appearance. We're talking about what's inside these logs too. They are filled with character, because these trees have grown in those kind of difficult circumstances, and they have stood up to that. Okay, enough of that. Let me grab we're improvising big time here today, and I am just roughly hand holding. And I apologize for the shaky camera work that's about to come up. But let's go have a look. I had to put samples down on the. Let me switch the camera. Y'all been looking at me talk long enough, and I just took just not even a representative sampling today of some. These are some various character woods, some components of log staircases that we've tenonized. Satterwhite makes all kinds of house logs. Here's one that's a double round. Most of our logs are a D shape. That's our most popular log, but that's a double round log where it's got a bevel on the inside and outside. We do a lot of handwork, as you'll see on this, which has been, that flat surface has been worked by hand by a man with a foot adze. I mean, literally chopped. This several of these pieces here have this started out as a round dowel, and I don't know if you can see the fluting and the handwork that's gone on to make that look. It really is a handcrafted piece. I've got some more samples. Look at this stuff just blowing and rolling through this pasture here. We have squared off logs, such as this one's also been foot adze on the exterior surface, because a lot of people just love that look. You can get just anything you want in a log. Anyway, we are blowing away still. Goodness. All right, let's go. We're here for a construction demonstration, so let's go see some of that. I'm just going to give you a quick recap while I walk here. We're in Georgetown, Texas today, live streaming on Facebook. This is like everybody, Satterwhite, you can look at our website. We've got 80 plans online, and that's newly revamped. That's just been freshened up. The biggest introduction of new plans in probably 20 years at Satterwhite Log Homes. That's on our website today. Let's see what we're doing here. So one unique thing that's a little special on this house. So we're applying some polyurethane caulk. We've got a tongue and groove interlocking that acts as a weather seal on these logs. So that little bead of caulk that you see right there, that stuff is so strong. These guys are going to set a log here. It never hardens, it never crystallizes, but that Sikaflex caulk, if you came back a week from now and had to take that apart, you would have to tear the wood apart. It is so strong.
Good? Yeah.
So one of the unique things it's not really unique, but it's special, and this is on this home, this is a dovetail corner. This is not our standard construction. It is an option though. If on all of we have multiple log profiles, as you were just seeing in our, and when I shot the samples that I had laid out over there on the ground. But so it's one of those things that is you work with your Satterwhite salesman to what you want in your home. This is one of those options that a lot of people just love the look of it. Now, dovetailing is a historic technique. Back in the day when they were, the pioneers would come into an area and they would build log homes and if you were trekking on the Oregon Trail and you just got to Oregon, you couldn't, you used the summer season to go across the continent in a covered wagon, and when you got out to Oregon, the critical thing was to build shelter as fast as possible because winter was coming on. So they didn't have the luxury of drying logs properly or anything like that. So they cut trees and they got with it as fast as they could and trying to get some shelter for winter. That's the reason there are a few historic log homes out west. You'd be surprised how many of those have replacement logs from Satterwhite. We help out on projects like that, close to our heart. But because they were built with green timbers, they of course shrunk. I remember as a kid on that 1973 trip to Roosevelt Lodge, we stayed, the cabins were at the Roosevelt Lodge campground inside Yellowstone National Park were built by those techniques. And what happens when you have a green log is they separate. Those joints will open up because, again, that log's losing moisture over time, and that joint opens up. And boy, did I ever understand that clearly, because we froze to death up there. Yellowstone is on the Continental Divide at the top of the Rockies, and even in June, late June, it got pretty bitter cold in those cabins at night. I mean, you could tell that people had gotten paper towels and everything they could find, and they were jamming them into the cracks between the logs